All right. Welcome, everyone. Ivana Taylor here. I am your host for Bizapalooza Chat. And today I have my most wonderful guest, Pam Didner. But first, let me tell you a little bit about what we are talking about. And I also want to mention that today's Bizapalooza Chat is sponsored by our friends at the Canon Maxify line of printers. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Awesome. I've got one. I've got a picture of one that's on the Twitter stream right now. I love it. Okay, so I have to admit something to you. Today's conversation is all about global content. And I am so embarrassed to admit that it had never occurred to me, like even though I knew in my head that this content was going out worldwide, quite frankly, and I knew about content marketing, and you did too, but it had never occurred to me that you can look at content from a more global perspective. I mean, we focused on content aimed and customized for a specific audience, right? And of course, if your audience is global, you're going to look at it that way. But it just hadn't occurred to me to develop a content strategy with global in mind. So what about you? Bet you haven't thought of it either. And so for that reason, I want to make sure that you get all the information you need and that you can create content that engages people regardless of their country or their culture, and that you can identify the key actions to take. And so for that reason, once again, I brought on Pam Didner, global marketing expert and author. She has led Intel's enterprise product launches, and she's been a speaker. She's actually going to be here in Cleveland speaking at Content Marketing World. I'm so excited, keeping my fingers crossed, hoping I get to meet her. And now I'm going to introduce her to you as well. Hello, Pam Didner.
Hi, Ivana. How are you? Can you hear me well?
I hear you perfectly. I hope that the rest of the folks can hear you too. I'm getting a message. I hope that you guys can hear her. Tweet us and let us know if you can hear us. Okay, I'm going to assume that you can. And so we're just going to keep moving along. All right, so a little housekeeping first. You can be watching us here on this video, which is awesome. And you can also follow along, comment in the search box, you type in hashtag Bizapalooza Chat, and make sure that you click on the live button stream. Okay, so now let's get right to it. Pam, I'm going to ask you the same question that I'm going to ask our tweeters today. And that is, if I can get my computer to do exactly what I want it to do, because it would just freed up. What is global content marketing, Pam?
Well, that's actually a very good question. Global content marketing is really no different than content marketing per se, if you think about it. In general, why do we do content marketing? A lot of time we do it just because we want to make sure that we provide useful and educational information to our customers. And we do that for a specific region or a specific country. And the global content marketing is really just take a mindset, the similar mindset that you have, and to the next level. And think about in terms of if you want to scale the content across the regions, what are the couple things you need to pay attention so that you can scale your content and at the same time to be helpful and then provide information to your customers. Does that make sense?
I think so. So in other words, it's more of a mindset thing than a specific type of content.
I think it's a combination of both. You hit the core. I think if you really think about it, and I'm going to use myself as an example. If I look at the Google Analytics of say www.pamdidner.com, and I will notice probably 80% of my customers are actually coming from the US, or I call it North America, including Canada as well. But it is a good chunk of it is actually coming from Asia Pacific, specifically China. I think that's probably has something to do with my background. And with that being said, if I really want to target or I really want to position myself as a thought leader in that specific region, I need to make sure I be cognizant in terms of the information I share with them or I share with my target audience can also be applicable or helpful to them. Does that make sense? So one thing is actually mindset change. Then the next things that you need to do is take that mindset into a specific, into the execution mode. And the best way to do that is actually look at your data and analytics to determine what you want to do next and how you want to scale that content across different regions or a specific country. I hope that's helpful.
Awesome. I think so. I'm going to have to put a message out there. I put the question out on Twitter. Folks, the question for you is there it goes. What is global content? So let us know from your perspective, what you feel global content is. So now let's go. Excellent. All right. So Pam, what is it that you know for sure about content marketing?
What do I need for sure? What do I need?
What do you know for sure about content marketing? Global content marketing, I'm sorry.
I think the best way to answer that question is what is your intent? And there are two things from my perspective. When we do any kind of marketing, there are products we want to sell and the services that we want to promote. And at the same time, we want to be helpful to our customers. And the content marketing, in a way, is trying to find the balance between these two. Sells your product and services, at the same time, provide the helpful and educational information to your customers. And the content marketing, or when you create a piece of content, you need to think about how can you balance these two in terms of selling your products, at the same time, be educational and helpful to your customers. So that when I think about content marketing, I always think about, what can I do to actually balance these two? So I don't, I'm not too stealthy, if you will.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I think that is exactly the issue. And I think that's the issue we all struggle with, especially small business owners. I can assure you, they really struggle with how do I educate? Here's the thing, Pam. If I'm educating my customers, am I not also educating my competitors for them to compete against me? How do you know where to draw this line on educating and marketing?
That's actually a very good question. I thought about it quite often. It's kind of like sharing, right? How much are you going to share? Are you sharing too little or are you sharing too much? Are you giving too much free or are you charging too little? Every single business, doesn't matter if it's large enterprises or small businesses, they will always encounter that. However, what I have noticed and or based on my observation, I think the customers nowadays is a whole lot more smarter than when I was kind of like a young consumer 20 years ago. And literally all the information is at their fingertips as long as they have a smartphone. They can search almost anything. So if you don't give them the information, they will find it somewhere else anyway. So my take on this is not necessarily sharing too much to the point that you are helping the competitors. My take on this is if they are not getting it from me, they're going to get it from someone else. Might as well, for me, just lay out on the table openly and share with them in terms of pros and cons of the things that, from their perspective, that might be helpful. So I'm just telling you that information is everywhere. and the consumers or customers are much smarter and more sophisticated. And sometimes it's better to be transparent.
Oh, I love it. I'm a big transparency believer too. So let me tell you what some of the folks are saying out on Twitter.
Sure.
I'm so glad to see so many of our friends here, Pam. We've got Pierre Dubois. He is a team member, a coworker of mine. He and I do the Small Business Book Awards. Do you know Pierre?
I don't know Pierre. Hi.
Yeah. So anyway, Pierre says, I asked the question, what is global content? He says, global content is based on evergreen topics that fit a global audience and your intent. So that sounds like a little bit of what you've been talking about. And I love that, my God, my thing keeps, Julie Zisman says, if I can see her, check the maturity of different markets for your product so that you can create the right content strategy and customer journey. I like that idea of customer journey. And David Kutcher says, marketing content without intent is content without purpose. So you got anything to respond to some of those folks?
Yeah, I do actually. There's a couple things. I think Julie mentioned about products, and I 100% agree with that. I think the product will actually determine what kind of content that you need to create. If your product is very homogeneous across all divisions, for example, at Intel we sell microprocessors. Microprocessors are microprocessors are microprocessors. It really doesn't matter you are selling Asia Pacific or you're selling Europe. The product is homogeneous. Because the product is homogeneous, your messaging or your content probably can be a little bit more standardized or universal. I hate using these two words, but you know what I meant. However, if your products are heterogeneous, that means you have to customize or repackage your products for different regions. For example, the hair care products that we use by PMG, the same hair care products in the US might be packaged differently and also give a slightly different names, say in China. If the product is heterogeneous, they are customized and localized for the locals' needs, then you will need a slightly different content and your target audience might be different. Does that make sense? So Julie's comment about customers makes perfect sense to me. Pierre's comment in terms of evergreen content, again, that comes back to the product. And I love when he said that with intent. And we don't create content for the sake of creating content. We're creating content with a specific intention and a purpose in mind. Evergreen content is nice, and if your product is homogeneous, it's very easy to scale. You probably just have to translate it. And but that doesn't really mean that evergreen is always applicable, if you will, for scaling content across the regions. Does that make sense?
I think so. You've brought up, I have to tell you, once again, this is like whack on the side of the head moment.
Okay.
I mean, and we'll get to I'm sitting here thinking I'm being so self-revealing, and I'm going to talk to you about that a little bit later.
All right. Love to hear.
I am not ashamed to put out there that how obvious is that, right? We all know that, let's say, the hamburgers that McDonald's puts out in Russia or different parts of the
country
are completely different. And anyone who's traveled any little bit has seen similar products with a different name, with a different package. How could the content not be the same? So this brings us to question number 2, Twitter chatters, that I'd love you to talk about. I'm going to post it here in a minute. Okay, so what is the difference? And you've kind of talked a little bit about this, but let's try to tighten it up a bit for the rest of the world. So truly, what is the difference between content marketing and global content marketing? And I'm going to let those people answer that question. But with you, I want to talk about, you talked about scaling worldwide. So talking about a massive brand like Procter & Gamble or McDonald's, or these brands that have to tweak their products.
Right.
How do you actually scale that?
Is scaling in a sense for small businesses or scaling in terms of the big enterprise? These are the two. I actually have two different responses for that.
Well, you're gonna have to give us both now that you opened up that can of worms.
All right. I think at the end of the day, in terms of the scaling content, it all comes down to a budget discussion. What kind of budget do you have? What kind of resources do you have? I hate saying this. At the end of the day, it's really a budget discussion. Obviously, the bigger the enterprises are, the probably the more money they have. If they actually have more money, chances are they probably can do more things, right? And for small businesses, obviously we don't have a lot of budget. I don't, right? I worked for a big corporation before, and I had a huge amount of budget. Fantastic. But now I have a small consulting firms, and we have very limited budget. Then I have to do things a whole lot differently. And for small businesses, my recommendation, when you talk about global marketing or even global content marketing, it's not necessarily that you have to market to all the 120 some countries out there. For small businesses, you need to be incredibly focused. You need to think about in terms of what are the specific countries you want to go after. Global doesn't mean, massive push. Global means sometimes, in a small business sense, it means incredibly focused. What are the 1 or 2 countries you want to go after you got your local market down? And then you do it one by one and make it a baby steps. And that's what you do actually for the small businesses. Even for the small businesses, the content marketing side of things initially is really not about content marketing. It's really about sales enablement. Small businesses, especially initially, they don't really have budget to do marketing. They don't. What they really need to do, guys, if you are listening, is actually understand what is the sales infrastructure that you have for that country. Are you going to hire distributors to sell your products, or are you going to hire sales reps to actually help you out? Get your sales part of it down. Your content is to create content to support the sales team. Get that first. Then you worry about marketing. Does that make sense? So in terms of the global content marketing on the small business side, global content marketing will come in the back seats. Get the sales down first, then the marketing will come naturally.
That is such great advice. That is such great advice. Because
I'm marketers, and I actually tell people, don't do marketing yet. Focus on your sales.
That's what I say too. I work with a lot, people are like, I need new customers. And I'm like, you got to look at your sales process first. Right? Yeah. You must look at that. And I'm so, so thrilled and happy to hear you say that, because I think that is so very important, because oftentimes, and I think that's why people struggle not knowing what to put there in terms of content.
Right. Sales first.
But sales first, and knowing what your sales process, and once again, what is the thing with all marketing? Know who your customer is, know what matters to them, and so on and so forth. But this brings our next question straight up.
There's one point I want to make.
Oh, please.
So I said sales first. That doesn't mean you have to be salesy. It doesn't mean that you have to be like, oh my God, I have to sell my product. So everything I created is like a very sales-driven type of content. You still can be very helpful to your customers at the same time, discreetly promoting your products. You don't have to be like so much in someone else's face to sell it. So I just want to make sure people understand that when I say sales first, that doesn't mean that you have to create incredibly sales-centric type of content. That might turn people off, and you need to find a balance. So I just want a disclaimer up front.
Get it out there. Okay, so we were talking about all of this. So what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that folks make when it comes down to creating content marketing, or especially global content?
I think there are several. The first one is people tend to underestimate how much effort, resources, and budgets are required to do that or to do it right. And they feel like, oh, you know what? I created one piece of content. Just go ahead and translate that, and then create a local website, and then done. But the problem about content marketing, just like Ivana, you're doing this chat every single week, I assume, right? Are you doing it every
Correct.
week? Right. So content marketing, it's a commitment. You are committed to do this once a week, to get your message out, to make sure that your audience know what you can share. And that is a commitment. And to do global content marketing, same thing applies. You need a certain amount of commitment to somehow get it right. A lot of companies, they don't not necessarily have the budget and resources to do it, and then they jump in and then expect everything to work, and that's not going to fly. So it's lack of a commitment and lack of understanding of the commitments in terms of resources and also budget. From my perspective, that's one of the biggest mistakes.
So lack of commitment, lack of budget.
And
Got it. Go ahead.
The second thing is the conflict between the corporate team and also local team. Let's assume you actually hire a local sales, right? The local sales is on the ground and kicking ass and try to get you sales and doing incredibly well. And you are on the corporate side, you're on the headquarters. And a lot of time, what you think you can help them or what they think that you should do, they are two different things. So from time to time, especially if you continue to grow and scale your content, you will see the tension and also the conflict between the local team and also the corporate team. And the challenge is how to mitigate that, and so that both teams are actually working toward the same goal. And you will spend a lot of time going back and forth on that. That's another thing. And what I have noticed, it tend to go one way or the other a lot of time. The corporate have a total control of it, which is a strong centralization. Sometimes it's the corporate has nothing to say and local just run with it and do whatever they want. And the thing is, how can you find a balance? And so for example, if the content is created by the corporate, can the local leverage that? And if the content is created by the local, can the corporate team and see what they can do to scale that? So that is a lot of going back and forth. And that's another thing that people need to make an effort in trying to find a balance.
Boy, these are all such great responses. I got to read you some of the stuff on Twitter. Oh, it keeps going.
I'm sorry, I cannot see for some reason. I hit the live, but it's not updating on my computer.
It's not updating on your thing. You might have to. Yeah. No worries. The conversation is hot. So Julie Zisman says, as far as mistakes go, creating content and not distributing it. I think she makes a really good point there.
Yeah.
And oh my God, Pierre has a background in automotive, and he said Chevy had a great example with their Prince tribute ad, but they used an old red Corvette that Prince referenced. So that was really nice. Okay, very good. And anything else? Other brands forget to provide value and educate. And I think that kind of talks that Anna says. Anna_Kerr says that. I don't know. Let's see. Anything else you want to mention there? You know, you talked a little bit about translations. I'm really kind of curious about that because, you know, if you put something up on your site, I don't know if this happens with a blog. Does Google translate that automatically, or you know how you get that option? And say a little something about that.
Yeah, there are multiple different ways to do translation. Obviously, you mentioned one of them, which is machine translation. And if people don't have budget, obviously, you cannot hire someone else to translate your content. Machine translation is probably by default the most cost-effective way to do it. And but if you decide to do a machine translation, the best way to do that is to make sure that the content you are writing doesn't have slang or doesn't have a certain kind of jargons that the Google translator that don't understand. Does that make sense? So if you do a B2B
Absolutely.
proper one using a proper English, and every word have, it's basically its natural definition by default, fine. And doing the machine translation is probably not a bad idea. However, a lot of time we use this, certain slang, certain jargon, certain keywords, and then the machines may not pick the minor differences. And I personally think if you do any kind of translation, this is Pam talking, and that you actually hire a human, a translator to do it and do it right. I mean, you don't even have a lot of budget to start with. Why do you, let's go for quality a little bit. You can hire somebody who is, a freelancer and translate it, and also actually have your local sales team or local channel partners to read it, make sure that it's actually fine, and before you actually publish it. So translation, there's three ways. You machine translation, hire a freelancer to do it, or even hire a translation agency that to actually manage your content. So there's multiple ways of doing that. There's another thing that you can think about in terms of not to do translation. For example, what if you create a video and then you subtitle the video in English? I mean, I would say majority of the people, I'm not saying all of them, I would say majority of people, especially people on internet, they probably understand English. If you create a video like Ivana, you are recording my video, if you put English as a subtitle and assume your target audience are sophisticated enough, even though there might be a marketer for the other countries, they can read English, then you probably don't need a translation. Does that make sense? That's one, that you don't have to deal with translation. You assume that your target audience can read English. And that's another cost-effective way to look into a translation. Translation, it's depending on how many pieces of content you want to translate, it can be costly. Then you need to think about it. What kind of content can you create that doesn't require a translation, and the information or the message and still can be conveyed across all countries or regions? You need to give some thought.
Wow. Yeah. I think that is excellent stuff. You are bringing up so many things that in so many ways are obvious, and yet every time you say it, I'm like, oh my God, I didn't think of that. I don't know about you folks if you're getting that, but that's exactly how it's hitting me. Okay, so I think we might have actually talked about this, but I'm going to put the question out to our Twitter sphere. Oh, I do want to mention that Kelly Hungerford, I think you know her, talked about, mentioned repurposing of content. Right? Can you say a little bit about that?
Yes, I can. Kelly Hungerford, she's great. She's a good friend of mine. And she was a community manager for Paperly for several years. And granted, when you work for a small startup, you don't have a lot of marketing budget. So, and she does Twitter chat on a weekly basis, and I love it. And I participated in one of her Twitter chat, I would say about 1.5 years ago, and that was a lot of fun. And so she sent me the list of the questions on the Twitter chat. And of course, I'm just like typing rapidly and trying to answer all the questions, and people jive in, and I want to, and say agree or add additional comment. It was a very stressful and fun 1 hour. And of course, once that's done, right? No. And keep the momentum going. And Kelly would take some of the fun tweets and then create an image with the quotes from that tweet chat, and then give that person the credit. And then she posted on Facebook, on Paperly's Facebook page, and she also posted on the tweets, for the next several weeks. All of a sudden, 1 hour of tweets become like a week long of the images or the information that she can share on the upcoming Twitter communications or promotion, and also on the Facebook page. So that's the essence of the repurposing content, if you will. And of course, you can see it. People who there's a lot of a company. A startup. They kind of share recipes. For example, if you sharing a lot of recipes on your Facebook, and after say 3 or 4 months, you literally have 30 or 40 recipes. Maybe you can create ebook, right? And it can be a print or it can be a digital copy. Again, that's repurposing of a content. So you need to think about the content that you created, even a small chunk of content. How can you aggregate that into another piece of content that you can share with your customer? Or it's a big piece of content, such as 18-page white paper. How can you break those down as a snackable and digestible type of content that you can also use for your social media communication? So there's 2 ways of doing it. The big piece of content, can you break them down? Or little piece of content, can you consolidate and become another piece of content?
Awesome. Thank you for mentioning that. That is perfect. Perfect. So I got to tell you, I interviewed a variety of influencers. And I don't know if you know Riva Lazansky. She used to be with USA Today, and she works a lot with small businesses. And when I interviewed her a little while ago, one of the things that she mentioned was what a huge opportunity that local businesses have in selling worldwide, right? Now, if you're a local business, I mean, do you have any examples, especially now that you've been in the small business landscape, do you have any examples of local businesses who may have kind of taken a step forward in global content and taken their business more global through content?
That's actually a very good question. I think I want to address that in 2 different perspectives in terms of local businesses. And the first one is actually, for example, is a local carpet cleaner. Okay, so I actually use a carpet cleaner in Portland, and I use the same carpet cleaner probably for 10 years. Every single year during the springtime, I will actually have my carpet cleaned. And does it make sense? Because all his customers are within Portland, Beaverton, Wilsonville, those are local cities around Portland area. It's local, right? He cannot actually do his business physically, like say in Japan, because they clean carpet. He cleans carpet in Portland.
Right, right.
Well, how do you take that global? Well, it depends. You can actually take that global if you decided to say, let's assume the way that you clean the carpet is a proprietary way of cleaning. You use certain kind of solution, you use certain kind of chemical, you mix them together and you make the carpet clean. You have a certain way to clean it to make it better. Let's assume that your information is proprietary or patented. Even though it's local, you probably can franchise that type of business to some other countries. Does that make sense? And if you do that,
I love that.
If you do that, again, it's a sales-driven type of effort. Then your content should follow sales. So that's one way of physical local businesses that can be global. Again, it's not content marketing first. It's your business model first, then the content will follow. Okay, so that's a first. Second is a startup that they actually have a SaaS platform. Let's just use BuzzSumo as an example. That's a UK company, right? But they build a content management tools, analytics to actually share with you in terms of what kind of topics are trending, and you can see what kind of content has been created and getting more, getting a lot of traffic. Maybe you can leverage that and when you create your content. BuzzSumo is, when I talked to them, I would say 3 or 4 years ago, they were a 3-person company. 3-person. Now,
wow.
big. They have hundreds and thousands of subscribers, and they probably have a lot of, probably over 30,000 or 40,000 users that actually use their tool, limited features. And of course, if they like them, they can upgrade to a different model. For that, initially, they did not market. They don't have budget to market. They don't. They made it very clear. So they focus on product fit. They spend all their money and all their effort to make their product right. That's called product fit. And once, and they give the product away free. They let a lot of people try it first, and those people provide the feedback, and they can continue to refine and adjust their product. And they start slowly. They created a pricing model that people can actually purchase, and so they can buy additional features. And for a long time, it's organic. They don't have content. Their content marketing is actually embedded into their tools. For example, if you log into a BuzzSumo, and then you will see a chat feature that if you have any question, you can chat with somebody. And if they added a new feature, they actually have a pop-up window to tell you what features that has been improved. From my perspective, that's also a content marketing, but that has been embedded into the product. Does that make sense? Now they actually have a marketing people that actually help them to market. But initially, for longest time, it's organic reach. And at the same time, spend a lot of effort to get your product right. So I hope I answered your question by giving the two.
I think you did. You know, one of the things that you're talking about that I think is really fascinating, especially in this example that you gave with BuzzSumo, you said even, you know, using the chat box, gathering your input, right? Yeah. And then
whenever gathering your features, they embed it into the product itself to actually, when you log,
right. And then they would notify you, right? That's content marketing.
That's content marketing, but it's embedded into a product.
Say more about that, because it had never occurred to me. To me, content marketing was, you know, blog posts, even social, white papers, infographics, you know, all those different things that are traditionally thought of as content marketing. Until you said that, it had never occurred. What are some of the more non-traditional types of content marketing?
Yeah, I think you are talking about what, you know, what content marketing is and what kind of format that defined as a content marketing. You are totally right. When people talk about content marketing, blog posts, videos, white paper, PDF, and it's basically all the certain kind of formats that you access the information online. What I notice is, and this is just my observation, that a lot of SaaS platforms, even the mobile apps, okay, especially mobile apps, and moving forward, which is wearables, that's the Fitbits, or even the
right,
and the things that you can actually wear, or even the Google glasses or whatever. What I call it the wearables.
Correct.
If you notice, the form factor or the screen size is getting smaller and smaller moving forward. So we move from a big desktop screen to a laptop to tablets, now to the phone, and then we're talking about wearables. So have all of us thought about, in terms of, if we do want to market or using content as a way to market to our customers, now the form factors are getting smaller and smaller. How the PDF or the white paper is not going to work very well. Does that make sense? So when we think about, is it possible to embed the useful content actually into the product itself? So I think BuzzSumos, especially the SaaS platform, any kind of mobile apps, when you open the app, there's a lot of useful, interesting tips and content inside the app itself already. And at the end of the day, I think content marketing will merge with user experience, UX, because the form factor is getting smaller and smaller. And that will have a huge impact in terms of how we consume content in the future. And that will dictate what kind of formats that will move forward. So
wow.
It's getting complicated.
I know. Once again, you have blown my mind with us. You really have. It's like this has been one of those whack on the side of the head tweet chats for me.
Thank you.
It really has. It really has. You know, just when I thought I had heard everything. I haven't heard. Just when I thought I had heard everything, I feel like I hadn't heard anything. It's incredible. Okay, so I want to sort of, I did ask a question out there that says, oh, how do you find your voice for writing content that's targeted to your ideal customer, especially when that customer is all over the place? So we had already talked about, let's assume, because this can't be said enough, you're focused on your business model, you've developed a sales process, right? Let's even jump so far as to saying you have a marketing message.
Okay.
And now you've got, and I know it's taken me, and I'm still working on it, I admit. It took me a really long time to find a voice.
Yes.
Right? A point of view, as you know, Joe Polizzi likes to call it the tilt.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we're talking about, right? Because that is, let's talk about that whole thing. Because I think I have that big giant book, and I'm sorry, out of everything that he's talked about in that book, to me, and he didn't talk about it enough, is content tilt. This idea of having your skill, your talent, what you do, then that, the whole chicken whisperer thing, right? You know about chickens, you like to teach, and then there's the tilt.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that whole thing, and then let's apply it to finding your voice, your tilt worldwide.
Yeah. It's hard. I don't have a concrete answer for that question. I want to ask. And
okay.
The finding the voice is slightly different between the large enterprises and also small businesses. Again, I want to talk about these and the two different perspectives. Large enterprises, they usually have a brand guideline, yeah, and they will dictate the color of the logo, what kind of font sizes you should use, and what kind of copies, what's the brand persona, and they even will have the messagings for their products. So when you have a brand guidelines, inside the brand guideline, you can see a lot of things, right? Like I said, the logos, where logo should be placed on the print or even on video formats, and the font, the messagings, and sometimes you will see that what does the brand stand for. So when you have a brand guidelines or brand guidebook, you can actually, it's very easy to find your voice because it's already being established. Okay, you can look at that, get a sense of it, and then you probably can write something just based on that. Small businesses, on the other hand, they don't have a brand guidebook, and they change. They probably started their business, the business is growing, and it's kind of like 2 steps forward, 1 step backward a lot of time because they are growing, right? The brands or your voice will change as it goes. And that means your voice is not set and established like the big enterprises. HP is HP is HP. Microsoft is Microsoft is Microsoft, right? I mean, Google is growing, but you know what the Google's voice is. So the big enterprises kind of established, but small business are not. So if you are not, you have to accept the fact that your voice will change on a regular basis. There's no way out. So that set that fact straight. Right? And finding your voice, it's very similar about finding yourself. And it's a journey. And I think if, I assume there's a lot of female listeners, and you understand what I said. You know, when we are 20s, or when we are 30s, when we are 40s, for women, I cannot speak for men. Men probably stay the same. They don't change. For me, and for a lot of my female friends, they have seen themselves morph. Yeah, the 20-something of us, and the 30-something of us, and the 40-something of us, we are all different. We are all different. That means our voice has changed, our writing style has changed. But for guys, I have to tell you, my husband loves reading comic books. When he was 16, he was reading comic books. When he was 26, he was reading at 36, he was reading at 56. They don't change. Nothing. I love them. Okay. But for women, I think guys change too, but I'm just exaggerating a little bit, so I apologize. But for me, my voice has changed. And for small businesses, that's what's going to happen to you. Once you find your voice, I have to tell you, you will notice you have grown. You have to change your voice again. That's
well, you know,
you have to deal with that. I don't know your question, but that's truly from the bottom of my heart. Because like you, Ivana, like you probably been on your own much longer than I, right? I left Intel when 2014. So I left Intel only for 2 years. I changed my website 4 times. And the voice, how I project myself, has changed dramatically in the past 2 years. 2 years. 2 years. And really, I actually created a brand guideline for myself when I left Intel, and that's my personal brand. Guess what? I threw that away. I recreated. So I want to have an answer for you and said, you know, it's easy to find your voice. The truth is, it's not.
It's not. I'm so glad to hear you say that, right? I agree with you. That's been my experience on the woman front. It's been my experience on the branding front.
Yeah.
But you know, something else I noticed, I was at a conference recently where there were a lot of big brands, and we're going to talk about this in a second. And what I really, it was a smaller conference, right? So there weren't like thousands of people there, and they were all content marketers, right? So it was just us insiders, so to speak. And one of the things I noticed about the folks who were there is how authentically open they were with each other about sharing the fact that they had no voice. They were frustrated. We played this game where they put article titles up there, and they said, I don't even want you to guess what companies put those up there. We just want you to guess what industry they came from. And nobody could. Because these articles had no distinction whatsoever. And I was really, really touched, moved, and inspired by the fact that they shared that this was a real struggle for them. What have you seen around that?
Well, I'm not sure I'm the right person to answer that question because I struggle myself. And my recommendation is you have to start somewhere. I am totally right. I am actually in the process of writing a white paper for a client of mine. And I read their brain guide. I know their writing styles. I know what to write, and I did extensive research, of course, online, and I print tons of white papers, and so I can read it, and and along with my ideas and their ideas, we can create our own white paper. You are totally right. When I look at all those white paper, especially the business white paper, if you cover the name of the company, they're all the same to me.
All the same. Isn't that scary?
Yeah. Except the products, right? They offer different.
Correct.
Their product features might be different. Their product positionings might be different. And that product is probably what differentiate them or make them a little bit unique. But in terms of writing style, it's actually very, very, very hard. There is one online newspaper. It's actually targeted for females, called the Skim. The Skim, SKIMM. And I am not affiliated with them in any shape or form, but I love their daily email. It's like I said, it's kind of like online newspapers. They aggregate the data. They aggregate what happened yesterday, and they rewrite it and then share with their target audience. If you look at the Skims writing, their writing is incredibly distinctive. It's very sassy and it's very sarcastic and it's targeted for female. That writing by itself actually has its voice. And of course, Wall Street Journal has its voice. But you know, regulars just like us, we just have to keep trying. I don't know what to say. I am trying myself.
Well, I have to. So this is the last question I'm going to ask you. Okay. I have heard that when you speak and when you give presentations at conferences and all these things, that I had asked folks, when you think about Pam Didner, what is it that comes to mind? And the response that came back is how people love the fact that you are so transparent and so self-revealing. The fact that you sort of open yourself up to your experience like you just did, which was awesome, right? Like, I don't know, I tried this, I tried this.
I cried. Therapy session, I drinks too. I'm kidding.
Sometimes I sit all by myself and I think, I'm in marketing. I'm supposed to have this answer. I can do this for other people. Why can't I do it for myself? So tell me, what is it about you that has you being unafraid about sharing your experiences so openly?
Are you kidding me? I'm afraid all the time. I'm afraid sharing too much. I hate saying this, Ivana. It has something to do with age. At a certain age, and I'm telling the girls who are in the 20s and 30s, I'm telling you I'm 40s, right? And when you are a certain age, you just don't give a crap. Okay? And you feel that, and at the same time, I feel I made a lot of mistakes in the future, in the past, a lot. And what I want to do is, if I can share my mistakes, that people don't make the same mistakes, hoo-hoo, it's a win. So I guess I overcome the fear of this putting myself down a little or self-deprecating. It has something to come from the perspective that, you know what, I made the mistakes. It would be great I share that. And if someone else that either feel that they are in the same position as me, or they feel that, oh my God, yeah, okay, that's not make the same mistakes Pam did, Pam made. Fantastic. So it's probably coming from the perspective that, again, try to be helpful.
I just love that about you, because I agree completely. I do often think that there is something, I know we keep talking about this age thing, and all you men who are on the chat, Tim Barry, I know that you are there. So Tim Barry, I'm asking you, I want to know, being that he's got a few years of wisdom as well, I'm kind of curious as to how this evolution happens, but I absolutely feel like I've transitioned from being really afraid, because you're trying to build your career, you're trying to build your credibility, you're trying to build your expertise. And at some point you feel like, all right, I'm like, here's where we are. I don't have anything to prove to anybody. I'm just going to go off and be myself. And I think that's just wonderful, wonderful advice from you. I'm not afraid either. Or I should say, like you said, I'm afraid all the time. I'm not afraid.
But at the same time, I was like, okay, whatever. What can I do?
Oh, you know, I'm jumping back into global again because I'm very, very curious.
Sure.
What are some of the cultural landmines that can really hurt you? Because, you know, maybe somebody saw this chat or somebody learned, like, oh my God, you know, I should be doing all this stuff. Are there any cultural landmines that maybe, you know, folks should look out for?
Yeah, I think there are a lot actually, but I'm just going to name a couple. Your political point of view. Right?
Good one.
If you are conservative, you are liberal, if you are trying to, it's okay to be yourself. I'm not saying that not be yourself, of course, but you need to understand the consequence if you are sharing a certain aspect of your lives and how that will impact you if you decided, you know, as your business. Sometimes it's important to take a stand. Fine, if you take a stand, but you need to understand what the consequences that come with it. And are you willing to pay for that price? So I always feel political point of view and your your point of view about certain religion and your point of view about maybe certain ethnic groups. And there are certain things, even though you want to be transparent, but you need to understand if you actually are too transparent. And I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not saying high, and I'm not saying lying. That's not my point. Please don't misinterpret what I'm trying to say. You just need to understand that there's certain things, if you share, there will be consequences. And are you willing to take that consequences for your stand? And sometimes may not be the best way to share, especially if you are business professionals. And you need to make that decision. Is that helpful? I personally feel these are the several things that that a lot of business professionals, especially us, that we are small business owners, we are not just trying to sell our products and sell our services. At the same time, we have to sell ourselves. And if that's the case, how far will you go, you know, to be transparent? So.
That's true. And there, you know, and I love what you said about being authentic about it. And there are certainly many wonderful ways to support the things you feel passionately about in a positive way through your content. I mean, like, who was it? Was it Zappos or somebody that was giving away shoes? Right. Yeah. The folks that, like, you know, if you believe in something, then there are certainly ways that you can contribute that in a globally accepting way.
Yes. I mean, after all, we're humans, right? We all want to do what's right. And there are certain things you can, there are certain causes you can certainly support. But again, it's you have to be cognizant in terms of what you do. So it doesn't backfire. Or if it's a backfire, that's okay too, as long as you know what the consequences are.
Exactly. Well, you guys, you have twittered away another hour at the Bizapalooza chat with our special guest, Pam Didner. Pam, thank you so much for being here.
You're welcome, Michael. And thank you so much for inviting me. And I unfortunately have a meeting I need to go to. And if you actually post questions on Twitter, and I will not be able to get to you until about 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, I want to make sure that you're all okay with that. So sorry.
Exactly. Just jump into the chat and answer any questions. You guys ask any questions you have for Pam Didner at Pam Didner, and get on her website, pamdidner.com, get her book, Global Content Marketing. And join us next week where our guest will be Tim Berry. So wonderful. We'll be talking about lean business planning. Very, very smart.
All right. Very, very good. Thank you so much for talking to you. And thank you, everyone. And have a great Monday.
Thank you, Pam.
Okay. Bye-bye.